10 professional athletes that dominated the MMA. No sport has more physical challenges than mixed martial arts, and some athletes have thought themselves tough enough to try their luck with the sport to varying levels of success. While some have had their heads pummeled in and been completely embarrassed, today we'll take a look at the athletes who have got into mixed martial arts and dominated the sport. Let's check them out. Holly Holm. Holly Holm was a world champion kickboxer before deciding to see how her skills would fit in the MMA. Her head-kicking skills served her well as she destroyed every poor lady in her path, building an 8-0 record. She then went up against the undefeated Ronda Rousey for the title. And this is undefeated, badass, mean, definitely going to break your arm Ronda Rousey. The Rousey who inspired women everywhere and made Joe Rogan cry. She was the #1 female superstar in the world, and Holly Holm completely exposed her. Holm used her skills in kickboxing to make Rousey look like a complete dope when it came to striking. And suddenly, the feared Ronda Rousey was donezo, and everyone pretended they never liked her to begin with. Holm lost her next fight in an incredible contest with Miesha Tate, but she deserves massive props for coming into MMA after kickboxing, knocking Rousey's head off, and completely shocking the world. Matt Mitrione. Ultimate Fighter 10 alum Matt Mitrione started his sporting career as a teen, training in kickboxing and karate. If you told me I had to face this heavyweight in a karate fight, I'd be earning my brown belt pretty quickly. Know what I mean? Playing football for the San Francisco 49ers before having to leave due to injuries, Mitrione decided to join the Ultimate Fighter, earning the nickname Meathead from coach Rashad Evans. While he lost in the quarterfinals of that competition, Mitrione managed to score a contract with the UFC and has gone on to defeat big names like Derek Lewis, Fedor Emelianenko, and Roy Nelson. Greg Hardy. I hesitate to include Greg Hardy in this video, not because he hasn't done well since moving from the NFL to the MMA, but because he's, allegedly, one of the worst people in the world. In the NFL, Hardy was drafted to the Carolina Panthers in 2010. He was performing well and looked to be a huge star in the making. But in May of 2014, Hardy was arrested for assaulting an ex-girlfriend, grabbing her, throwing her, and threatening to kill her. Hardy was found guilty, but after appealing the verdict, the victim did not appear in court to testify and Hardy was let off. He signed for a season with the Dallas Cowboys, but wasn't well liked by coaches and other teammates. Gee, wonder why. By the end of the season, Hardy was done with the NFL. Who would let such a controversial figure into their business? Why, Dana White, of course. Hardy was put in Dana White's Contender Series where he won 2 fights in a row and is now on the UFC roster. If nothing else, having Hardy in the UFC means we occasionally get to see him pummeled into oblivion by less polarizing, non-domestic abuser fighters like Tai Tuivasa, who only abuses himself with alcohol from the shoes of random fans. Much better. Chuck Liddell. It might be surprising to learn that Chuck Liddell didn't fight in MMA until he was 29. Before that, he was an amateur kickboxer and wrestler. He even graduated from college with a degree in business and accounting. Liddell soon learned that rather than a calm life moving money around on a computer, he'd rather move people's facial features into a bloody mess and scream like a banshee in front of thousands of stunned fans. The Iceman became the star of the early UFC, holding the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship for almost 3 years. Yoel Romero. If Chuck Liddell's knockout power is scary, Yoel Romero's freakish knockout power is truly terrifying. Even Robert Whittaker, who beat Romero twice, is afraid to fight him again. That's scary. The Cuban competed in the 2000 and 2004 Olympics as a freestyle wrestler, getting the silver medal and defeating plenty of former champions along the way. He then joined the UFC and then just began a stretch of absolutely murdering any helpless sucker that was unlucky enough to face him. But as terrifying as he is, Romero has a softer side. He's famous for telling everyone in a thick Cuban accent to not forget Jesus, soon after decimating Lyoto Machida. And after pummeling Luke Rockhold, the kind-hearted Romero gave him a nice big kiss. How sweet. Jake Hager. Slightly less scary, but still imposing, Jake Hager became famous as an athlete in the pseudo-sport of professional wrestling, under the name Jack Swagger. After winning the WWE Championship, he was released in 2017 and decided to try MMA in Bellator. Swagger has accumulated a 3-0 record with 1 no contest after, and I quote, repeated inadvertent groin strikes from Hager rendered his opponent unable to continue. In pro wrestling, it might be considered okay to nutshot your opponent behind the ref's back. But in real fighting, hey, Jake, not cool, bro. While Hager has gained his win streak on the back of less than stellar competition, he deserves some credit for trying his hand at real fighting. Just keep it above the belt, Jake, please. Herschel Walker. NFL superstar Herschel Walker won the Heisman Trophy in 1982 and is considered to be one of, if not the greatest college football player in history. While never reaching those heights in the NFL, Walker was hugely popular by the time of his retirement in 1997. More than 10 years later, at the age of 48, Herschel Walker did the logical thing and, the very ridiculous thing and began his MMA career, scoring a TKO victory against Greg Sack of Potatoes Nagy, followed by another win the year after. While that was the end of his short MMA stint, according to Fox Sports, Walker was still looking for a fight at the age of 54. A quick note to everyone in their 50s who's not a genetic marvel: do not fight in MMA. It is a dumb thing to do. This has been a message brought to you by your brain. Randy Couture. Much like Chuck Liddell, it might seem surprising that such a renowned figure in the sport did anything but fight MMA. In fact, Couture had his first fight at the age of 34, after a career in Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling. While he's had a lot of great fights in his career, my personal favorite was his fight against Tim Sylvia at UFC 68, where a 43-year-old Couture fought for the championship and spent 5 rounds demolishing Sylvia in an absolute spectacle. It was a true feel-good moment when Captain America became UFC heavyweight champion for the 3rd time. Mark Hunt, first fight at 36. Another heavyweight star, Mark Hunt, built his career in kickboxing. The Super Samoan won the K1 Grand Prix in 2001 and joined the UFC in 2010. In kickboxing and MMA, Mark Hunt has always had a distinctive style, namely beating the ungodly hell out of his opponents, encouraging them to do the same to him, then seeing who goes unconscious first. Check out his kickboxing epic with Ray Sefo, where the two fighters laugh at each other while going to town with brutal kicks and punches to the head. Then, if that's not enough CTE for one day, watch the incredible UFC fight against Antonio Bigfoot Silva, which lives in infamy as one of the most incredible brawls in MMA history. Brock Lesnar. When it comes to genetic freaks and scary dudes, Brock Lesnar may be number 1 on the list. A guy so scary that he's recently grown the dorkiest ponytail of all time, but no one is brave enough to tell him how bad it looks. Brock started his sporting career as a collegiate wrestler, winning the 2000 NCAA Heavyweight Championships. He then, of course, became huge in pro wrestling, where his legitimate amateur career gave him the credibility to be a superstar. He had a brief career in the NFL before heading into the UFC in 2008. There he made easy work of Randy Couture, winning the UFC Heavyweight Championship, which he defended against Frank Mir and Shane Carwin. He was soon destroyed by Cain Velasquez and Alistair Overeem, but Lesnar remains one of the most popular UFC stars of all time and deserves a ton of credit for bringing the sport into the mainstream. Also, Brock, if you ever watch this, I was just kidding about the ponytail. It was a joke. Ha ha ha. I think it looks cool. Honestly, I do. Okay, Brock? Brock? Dishonorable mentions. While some athletic stars have dominated in MMA, it doesn't work out so well for everyone. Before we end this list, let's take a quick look at a couple of athletes who didn't fare quite so well when getting into the brutal sport of mixed martial arts. James Toney. Toney remains a legend in boxing, where he's fought and beat some of the best. Like a lot of boxers in the early days of MMA, however, Toney decided it was not real fighting and made no bones about making his thoughts public. Seeing dollar signs, Dana quickly signed Toney up in a match against none other than Randy Couture, who by this time was an MMA and wrestling legend. The result was, surprise surprise, Toney quickly getting taken down and finished in 3 minutes. It was pretty embarrassing, but hey, everyone made a few bucks and no one was seriously hurt. CM Punk. As a pro wrestling fan, I love CM Punk. Every wrestling fan loves CM Punk. Do you know who doesn't love CM Punk? Dana White, who decided it would be a good idea to let him live his dream of being an MMA fighter on the biggest stage of them all. The smart thing to do would have been to go the Jake Hager, Herschel Walker route of giving your celebrity fighter an easy win to make them look good. But that's not how the UFC operates. Instead, they put Punk against ripped hunk Mickey Gall, who quickly embarrassed Punk. Worse still was Punk's next fight against Mike Jackson, which made Dana quickly realize the error of his ways and cut CM Punk, and never looked back. Since then, Punk has been given a hero's welcome back to the pro wrestling scene in AEW. So all has turned out okay in the end. But let this be a lesson to athletes everywhere. Don't be a hero. Find an opponent with a body that looks like it was made of cream cheese and make it easy on yourself.